Hola, chicos. As we start the year working with something that seems pretty basic, greeting other people, we're going to add in a layer of sophistication here that sometimes gets glossed over in Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. And that is the difference between tú and usted. So these will be the key words of the day. Tú and usted. Now, the trick here is that the words tú and usted both mean the same thing. Tú means you, and usted means you as well. So why two different words for you, and what's the difference between them? That's what we're going to talk about today. So basically, tú is informal, and usted is formal. So what that means is that when you're talking to someone, you're going to use tú to talk to them if they are, for example, someone your age or someone you know very well. Definitely anybody younger than you, family, friends, cousins, okay, classmates. This is when we use tú in informal situations, in friendly situations. That's what tú is for. On the other hand, we use usted in more formal situations. We refer to usted as formal or friendly. You'd want to use usted when you're talking to adults, when you're talking to teachers. Business people will use it with each other. You'd want to use it when speaking to the elderly or with strangers that you don't know. Definitely people in authority, people like your boss or your principal or the police, okay? There we would want to use usted because it's a more formal situation. It's a way to express a greater level of respect to the person that we're talking to by using usted. Now, we don't necessarily have two different words for you in English. We generally rely on other word choices to show our respect, but we used to have two different words. Have you ever heard the word thou or thee? Those are examples of a you in English that communicated much more respect and much more formality that we don't really use anymore. Okay, but in Spanish, tú and usted are both still used very commonly and very regularly. Okay, to give you an example of a miscommunication, let's say, several years back, there was a news story where the King of Spain was having a press conference, and one of the reporters asked the king a question, and he did it in the tú form. Remember, the tú form is the informal version of you. And he was talking to the king, which would generally imply more respect needed, a more formal situation. And the media just jumped on that, and everybody was talking about it, and everybody was discussing whether that was appropriate and what should happen to him for having addressed his king in the tú form. All right. That said, it is important to keep in mind that different countries and different regions in the Spanish-speaking world use tú and usted a little differently. For example, my background is in Spain, and in Spain they use tú a lot more. It was completely appropriate for me to address my teachers as tú, for example. Meanwhile, in certain parts of South America, for example, in Colombia, usted is used a lot more even within the family. Okay? So it's something you want to be aware of and you want to listen for if you find yourself in some of these places, because it comes down to being a matter of respect. And if you're not showing an expected level of respect, you may be offending someone even if you didn't mean to be. Okay. So the last thing I want to chat about in this video is what do I mean? Like, what does it look like? Like, how do I know if I'm using tú or usted and if I'm using it correctly? Because tú and usted are just words, right? They just mean you. But we need to like speak in sentences and actually get ideas out. So just for a second, I want you to think about the verb chart or the verb house, right? On that first left-hand side. At the top is the yo form. And how do the verbs end in the yo form? With O. That's how you talk about yourself, right? And then you have the tú form. That's the same word we're talking about today, this tú form, you, right? And how did that one end? That's the one that ended with the S. So it would either be as or es at the end of a word. Okay. Now below that one was the he, she form, él, ella. But really there's three things that live in that on that floor of the house. It's él, ella, usted. Usted lives down there too. And what was the verb ending down there with él and ella? That was the one that was straight up an a or an e, right? So the way you're going to show your respect in these sentences and in these questions when you're talking to somebody is if it's informal, somebody you know really well or somebody your age, somebody in your family, you're going to keep the S on that verb and you're going to use the tú form. You're going to say things like, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Dónde vives? Right? But if you're trying to be more respectful, more polite, you're talking to somebody that deserves a little higher level of formality, you're going to hear that that S comes off because you're going to be using that he, she form of the verb instead. And you're going to hear things like, ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Dónde vive? And of course, sometimes we will add words to our question to help clarify. For example, sometimes you will hear somebody say, ¿Cómo estás tú? How are you? ¿Cómo estás tú? And that tú just reiterating that we're in the tú form. But you also might hear, ¿Cómo está usted? Which also means, how are you? I like to think of it as meaning, how are you, sir? How are you, ma'am? ¿Cómo está usted? ¿Cómo te llamas tú? What's your name? ¿Cómo se llama usted? What's your name up here, sir? All right. Or you might hear other word choices that help us distinguish how formal we're being. For example, if you're just talking to your friend or someone you just met, you might say, ¿Dónde vives, Ana? Like, where do you live, Ana? Or you might hear somebody say, ¿Dónde vive, señor? Where do you live, sir? And that would be another way of showing that register, showing that how formal or how friendly you were trying to be with that person. So tú and usted is something that we're going to talk about and work on as we work on greetings. All right, adding that level of sophistication, that cultural awareness, all right, of knowing when to be more informal with people and when to be more formal and how to make our language match that expectation that we have. Okay? Gracias, señores, señoritas. I'll see you next time.